The state of Victoria, is verging on bankruptcy because of its excessive spending, has decided to end its EV subsidies. As in, you can no longer get the $3,000 subsidy to buy an electric car, but you will still have to continue paying tax on every single kilometre you drive in your electric car. And if you don't pay that tax, you'll have your registration revoked without your knowledge. Over 240 drivers, meaning a very large percentage of electric car owners in Victoria, have had their registration cancelled within the last 6 months alone for failing or not being aware of this road user tax. So make sure if you do buy an EV in Victoria, you educate yourself on how to go about filling out a logbook and giving the government what they want, which is your money. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. It's great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Sam Evans and I'm coming to you from Thailand. You all know why I'm here. Won't get into it, but I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you so much for your support this year. It's been amazing. And I hope you're doing really well as well. Now, Victorian residents will no longer have access to the $3,000 purchase subsidy from June 30 of this year, as the debt-laden state government looks at ways to cut back on spending. Now, during the pandemic in Victoria, the government shut down Victoria for, I believe it was, longer than any other place in the world. So we were locked down longer than any other place in the world. Was it because people were dying left, right, and centre in Victoria? No, not really. There was a fair few people that died in retirement homes, places where I think most people were over 80 years old. That did happen. But it wasn't like we had some sort of chaotic situation. But we were in a very strict lockdown for a very, very long time. The government spent enormous amounts of money during that period of time. And since then, it's spent enormous amounts of money as well. So they privatized the roads organisation called VicRoads. They sold it off, basically like an asset fire sale to try and raise some money. Essentially, I don't think the Victorian public really know this, but the reality is that Victoria is in a bit of a situation at the moment. They've had many, many restructurings, I think 4 restructurings in the public service. In other words, government employees have been forced to kind of, in a sense, reapply for their jobs, I believe 4 times now over the last 18 months. The reason being that if the government does a restructuring, they can fire people much more easily. Why are they doing this? Because they're verging on bankruptcy. That's why they no longer are giving out EV incentives for cars at all. The 3,000 EV incentive will be scrapped. So if you want to get an EV, now is the time to do it. You don't have long. You've literally got 3 weeks. Yeah. So jump on, buy whatever EV you think is good. You know what I think is good. Well, I right now think worth purchasing MG4. Really, really good option, right? That's probably what I'd go with, the cheaper electric cars. And of course, the Tesla Model Y. Those are my 2 biggest favorite picks right now. This decision to prematurely ditch this rebate was quietly slipped into the May state budget papers, but picked up first by EV-focused news site The Driven. So the government tried to keep that quiet. They don't want people to know that they're no longer going to give you a little incentive to buy an electric car. The Victorian government has had to make some tough budget decisions this year, and unfortunately not all programs have been able to continue. Given the growth in demand for EVs over the last 12 months, applications for subsidies will close at 6 p.m. 30th of June 2023, the government confirmed. Now, I think it's worth making a point here that no one else is really saying. I haven't seen this mentioned anywhere. Victorians genuinely vote for, usually, over the last decade, for the parties that are perceived as being more green and more forward-focused. I guess you might say more progressive. Sometimes they say crazy things, to be fair. They do. They say absolutely insane stuff, but they do really logical things as well. It's like a weird combination here. But basically, Victorians do vote more often. I'm not saying that that the Victorian public say crazy things. I'm saying the Victorian politicians say crazy things. Yes, I'm like, for example, the Green Party. They say things that make total sense, and then things that are just absolutely batshit crazy. So I don't really understand. But regardless, Victorians are very forgiving people, so they vote for them anyway. They're voting basically for electrification, for solar. Those sorts of policies, which are great. Some of the other policies are a bit strange, but those things are fantastic, which is why it's very strange that Victorians are not really buying EVs that much. EV adoption rate in Victoria is much lower than in many other states in Australia. Doesn't really add up. And I think it's got something to do with the fact that the government in Victoria has really had an axe to grind against EVs. I mean, it's basically the only place in the world where they started taxing electric cars. The only one that I know of. There's other countries planning to do so in the future, 2027 and onwards, but not now. So yeah, in my opinion, that's all a bit insane. The fact that they decided to tax EVs in, 2021 or 2022, back then. Anyway, fortunately, they've repealed this decision. When the program launched in May of 2021, the Victorian government intended to offer more than 20,000 subsidies for EVs, rolled out in batches, they say, ending no sooner than May of 2024. Unless all 20,000 rebates were taken up by then. So unless 20,000 EVs were sold by that time, it would end sooner. Now, they haven't been all used, so there's still plenty there. The government said the EV subsidy will apply immediately for any eligible vehicle purchase from Sunday, the 2nd of May 2021, until the rebates are fully committed, or 3 years, whichever is achieved sooner. There are now 2,776 remaining. So the government, that's what the government says, but I'm not really sure that 18,000 or 17,500 EVs have been sold in Victoria. I think that's not likely. Anyhow, here's what the Driven said. The Driven said that they sourced data from Carloop, and the number was 7,700 by April the 15th of this year. I don't know where the government's wacky numbers are coming from, but anyway, 7,700 EV subsidies were taken up by Victorians. So that should mean there would be, nearly 12,000 remaining. But, well, unfortunately, those will just be cancelled within 3 weeks' time. Buried in the state budget papers is a stat that claims only 4,713 applications for the zero emissions vehicle subsidy were processed in the year 2022-2023, compared to a target of 8,600. The 2022-23 expected outcome is lower than the 2022-23 target due to ongoing supply delays and decline in the number of eligible models in the program as vehicle price increases occur across the sector. Now, that isn't really true because there's actually more affordable EVs now than what there was back then. This is pretty evidenced by, the numerous number of EVs now that there are available under 70,000, which was the cutoff, versus what there was when they first rolled out the subsidies. Now, EV sales have grown, though, in Victoria, fortunately, during this period of time, in spite of the government kind of, to some degree, vilifying them by introducing the tax. They went from 1.8% in 2021 to 6.6% this year. Now, in other parts of Australia, they're at over 8%, even over 9%. But still, 6.6% is still a significant improvement on that 1.8%. So that's a good thing. Given Victoria is currently the only region that also stings electric vehicle and plug-in hybrid owners with a road user charge, which is the tax we've been talking about, other regions have deferred the plan until sales are higher. In other words, they aren't going to tax EVs until probably 2027, 28, because they believe that that's when EV adoption it'll be pretty well and truly done. Like, as in, most people will be buying EVs then regardless anyway. So this has meant that the state of Victoria has been the most hostile to EVs of, any place on the planet that I know of. More than 240 Victorian drivers have been. Now, very interestingly, more than 240 Victorian drivers have had their vehicle registration cancelled by the government for failing to pay the controversial zero and low emission vehicle distance-based charges, with one owner telling a news agency that their registration was cancelled without their knowledge. Basically, it seems the government is not saying, hey guys, just letting you know that we do tax every kilometre you do now. You need to keep a logbook, tell us every single kilometre you've driven from your logbook, and then pay a charge. And if you don't do that, we will cancel your car registration. Well, they've done it to 240 people, and I think most of them probably didn't know it was going to happen. So the system has been installed in a very strange way. Regardless, the state's zero emissions vehicle roadmap aims for half of all light vehicle sales to be zero emissions vehicles by 2030. Residents in other states and territories around Australia will still have access to rebates on the lower end EVs, including up to $6,000 in Queensland, $3,500 in Western Australia, $3,000 in New South Wales, and $3,000 in South Australia.